Hello everyone, in today's video we'll experiment Google ADK Callbacks. We can think of it as Spring Interceptor that intercepts the request in a particular point. As we explored so far, when a request comes to an agent, the agent will call the LLM model. And in case of tool required, LLM model will ask a function code back to the agent, and the agent will call the corresponding tool. So here, in both three components, Google ADK supports both before and after for each of them, like before the agent code, after the agent code, before the model code, after the model code, and before the tool code, after the tool code. With that being supported, we can easily imagine that we can do a lot of stuff, right? Like guardrail, state management, login and monitoring, caching, request response, modification, etc. So in our demo today, we'll try to follow this tutorial, adding before model callback and before tool callback, but in Java agent. So later you can look back this tutorial for expanding your knowledge. So what we're gonna do here is when the request goes to our agent and then to the model, we will create the before model callback in front of the model. And we will check that if the user message contains some inappropriate words. If yes, we will block the request and immediately return the redefined message to the user. The second example would be when the request has passed the model and the model requires tool calling. Then the agent will trigger the tool. And in this case, we will create a before tool callback in front of the tool to block some specific parameters. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at our current report. So here we only have one very simple agent, the weather agent, and it's told get weather. Simple enough. First, we're gonna add a before model callback, and we need to pass the before model callback instance. And this before model callback is a functional interface. So we can pass the lambda instead. We have two inputs. One is callback context and one is LLM request. And we're going to return the maybe LLM response. So our callback instance should like this. Callback context LLM request, and we're going to return a maybe of LLM response. And we can create a method with a similar signature like this. So instead of return a maybe empty, so now we can simply return this method, block keyword guardrail. Here we're going to pass the callback context and LLM request. So it's actually a method reference. And technically it's our instance of before model callback, right? So we can, to be honest, add it directly to our block here, this one. So now we pass our instance of before model callback. Okay, now let's move on to the implementation. So what we're gonna do here is we inspect the latest user message for block the word locked, if found, locked the LLM code and return a redefined response. First of all, we need to get the user message because we know that when the agent calls LLM, it passed kind of the whole conversation to the LLM, and the user message in this turn is actually the latest one. So basically, in order to extract the text from the latest user message in the request history, right? Request the whole conversation. Then we have to loop the whole conversation in the reverse way, right? And finally, we will get our last user message here. Once we have the latest user message, let's implement our guardrail logic. Let's say we will block any request that contains the block keywords. So if we catch that, we will return this content. I cannot process this request because it contains the block keyword. We create an LLM response and then we return it. In case not found, then we just return an empty. It means that we allow the request to process normally. Alright, now we have the implementation of our block keyword guardrail, which actually the before model callbacks. Let's try to test it. Let's run our ADK web server. Okay, localhost 8080. Let's ask how's the weather in New York. Okay, everything happened normally. Now let's try adding the block in our method. So for example, block, and then we see it's returned immediately the response without calling the model. And this response is the LLM response that we specify here. LLM response, I cannot process this request because it contains the blocked keyword. Let's move on to explore another callback. This time, the before tool callback in front of the tool calling, right? Okay, similar, we need to add before tool callback. And then we need to pass the before tool callback functional interface. Okay. Then let's copy this one. Similar to the reverse one, we're going to erase the previous static. And let's call it block Paris Tool Guardrail. Return maybe empty at the moment. And in this callback, we will check if the weather, like auto, right? Auto name get weathered. So as you can see, we registered auto here, get weathered and get weathered. So we check if our get weather tools is called with the Paris as the argument. So if so, we lock the tool execution and return a specific error. Okay, now let's implement it. So first of all, we need to make sure the tools is get weathered here. Because one agent can have many tools, and this callback will be triggered for every tool code. So this if condition is very important to make sure we guard on the get weather tool here. That our target tool name is actually the tools is triggered. And then we get the argument from the LLM compared with the one that we want to lock, which is Paris. If yes, then we block the request to the tool and return this error message. So be aware that this error result is a map. So it's similar to the result that we returned from auto, right? So in auto, we also return a map. And this one, we also return a map as well. It's different from the model callback where we return the LM response. Okay, now let's add it into our agent. Where the agent log Paris Tool Guardrail. Okay, now let's restart. Observe it. Then again, I'm going to, and we will ask, how's the weather in the capital of French? So we know that the request went to the agent, right? And then the agent will call the LLM model, and the model turns out the capital of France is Paris, and it's going to call the get weather with Paris as an argument, right? We can see it in the event here as well. So we can see the LLM model will ask the agent to call the get weather. The argument is Paris. And we can see it in the function response. It's returned immediately. The status error and the error message is policy restriction, where the checks for Paris are currently disabled by Tool Guardrail, which is our response here, right? Status error message, policy restriction, where the checks for is currently disabled by a Tool Guardrail. And all of this information will be aggregated and sent again to the LLM, and the LLM will return the final result that, I'm sorry, I cannot fulfill this request right now. blah, 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 blah. So this is the LLM response. Alright, that's pretty much just for today. Thank you so much for taking your time watching this video and series. Hope you can take something new here. See you next time. Happy coding!